In this edition, I'm going to break down and predict the upcoming fight in the UFC on Fuel TV 4 card between Mark Munoz and Chris Weidman. Now, this fight is a 5-round fight. I think that's a big factor in this fight, and I think there's two aspects that come into play. Is that one, this fight could end quickly, or this one could turn into a wrestling match and could turn into what people would call a boring fight. So that's just the two ways I could see this one going. So what I'm going to do this video, I'm just going to break down both fighters to do my prediction. I'll start with Chris Weidman. Now, Chris Weidman has been long time considered one of the greatest prospects in the middleweight division, if not all of MMA. The guy's definitely a prospect. I'd say he's even past the term of prospect. I think defeating Damian Maia, I know he's a young guy, but I think he's past the term of prospect. He's definitely a very promising mixed martial artist in the middleweight division in MMA. So his skill set, obviously he's training with Matt Serra in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's starting to grasp the whole concept of stand-up strike. He's still got a long way to go in the striking department. Very skilled wrestler, though. And with his stand-up striking, he has a big reach advantage in this fight. He has a very big size advantage in this fight. He has a 5-inch reach advantage in this fight. I think the biggest aspect and the most important thing is that he fights his range very well, keeps his distance from Mark Munoz, and respects his power. But he does fight his range well. I think he's still trying to figure out the whole striking game. But he has a good 1-2. He does incorporate leg kicks into his game. I think leg kicks could be detrimental, though, given Mark Munoz's power. He doesn't have ideal speed. I think the biggest factor with him in his stand-up department is the fact that he has a pretty good reach for a middleweight. There's no doubt about that. But in regards to concepts, I think they're, at least in the rudimentary phase, the guy does not throw what we would call volume. He likes to pick his spots. He does have a good jab, does have a good 1-2. He can work the body, and his leg kicks are effective given his long reach. But not ideal speed, hand speed, or not ideal quick pop in his step. In regards to his ground game, I mean, there's no doubting his wrestling game. The guy was a well-accomplished wrestler at Rutgers, and I think with the combination of training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with Matt Serra is even more outstanding. Adds a really good dynamic to his game. He's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I think he's definitely the better submission practitioner in this fight. There's no doubt about that, and that's saying something. Mark Munoz is definitely a very skilled grappler as well. But I think, given the fact that he's a very big guy, I think his size is a big factor. Obviously, technique is very important with wrestling. And when he gets guys in the clinch, he can control, he can throw knees, he can separate with elbows, and he has a very, very strong power double. I wouldn't say he's really explosive with his takedowns, but he works very hard to get his takedowns, and we've seen him have a lot of success with his takedowns. If he does get a hold of you, you're going to go down the ground. He has very good technique in his takedown, and he has incredible ground control. He does have good ground and pound, but I think his ground and pound is it's being overshadowed by Mark Munoz's outstanding ground and pound. But what I do think is that Chris Weidman is definitely the better submission practitioner in this fight. He's better submission artist in this fight. I think him training with Serra, I just think his learning curve is a little bit better. Obviously, he hasn't been in mixed martial arts as long as Mark Munoz. However, I think if he is to get Mark Munoz down the ground, he'll have that grappling advantage, the submission advantage in this fight. Seeing whether he could ground and pound Mark Munoz, that's the biggest factor, and whether he could get Mark Munoz down the ground is the biggest factor. So, and also in regards to the guy's never been beaten before. He's never been finished before. He does. I don't want to say he has a battle-tested chin, but he has taken shots from fighters. He has been wobbled before, but he hasn't been finished before. He hasn't been submitted before. So I think this will definitely be a fight to say where his chin stands. Obviously, it hasn't been finished, but I think Mark Munoz is definitely one of those guys who is a chin tester. There's no doubt about it. He has outstanding power. So where I see Weidman being successful in this fight, he could keep it standing. He could fight his reach well. But I think his best bet is to try and turn this into a gritty fight. Get Munoz in the clinch. Find out who the better wrestler is. Weidman could very well be the better wrestler. That's just something we're going to have to find out. I'd use my size. I'd use my technique. I'd try and turn this to a wrestling match. Try and make it a gritty fight and try and out-cardio and out-muscle, out-size Munoz and try and get him down on the ground. Try and work in a submission or try and win this fight by decision. So that's where I see Weidman being successful. So Mark Munoz, the Filipino wrecking machine. Mark Munoz, I mean, has been considered one of the top contenders in the middleweight division since dropping down from light heavyweight. He's been outstanding. And the guy in the stand-up game, I'd still say he's grasping the concept. He's not what we would call a polished stand-up striker, but what the guy possesses that, I don't want to say few fighters, but what he has in the middleweight division, the guy has incredible power, very deceiving power. Obviously, Munoz is a big guy, but he has very deceiving power. He does have a reach disadvantage in this fight. He has a 71-inch reach to Weidman's 76-inch reach. But what Munoz has, I think Munoz is very explosive. I don't want to say he has ideal hand speed, but he has good pop in his step, and he commits forward, and he knows how to throw the hands. He's not a combination guy either. He has a good 1-2, and he throws that right with bad intentions. He's pretty accurate, too. He connects with that right hand. And that's the thing, too, is that he always pushes forward, and he also can counter-strike as well. So I'd say he definitely has the knockout power advantage in this fight. The guy has 6 knockouts on his resume, and in the wrestling department, I mean, Mark Munoz is an outstanding college wrestler, an outstanding mixed martial arts wrestler. He incorporates wrestling very well into his mixed martial arts game. And, you know, he does have good ground control. He has good takedowns. He can sweep the leg. He can slam out of the clinch. That's the biggest question, whether he could slam Weidman. That's the biggest question, if he could get Weidman down to the ground. These guys are both good wrestlers. But when he gets people down to the ground, Munoz's ground and pound is devastating, and he's beaten guys up time and time again. Whether we saw what he did with Chris Weidman, a guy with one of the best battle-tested chins in MMA, and he beat the guy up to a pulp with his ground and pound. He's done it time and time again on the ground. And he is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. However, I don't see him submitting Chris Weidman in this fight. I think if he can get to the ground, I think his ground and pound is a big factor. I also think his power in the stand-up department is a very big factor. So lastly, is that Munoz has been finished before. You know, someone said it was a fluke the other day. I don't think it was a fluke. The guy was finished. Hamill connected with the head kick and finished him on the deck. But Munoz has been in battles before. He does have a tested chin, but he has been finished before. So that does send up warning flags. If Weidman is to connect with something, he could very well finish Mark Munoz. So that is a big factor, I'd say. Where I see Munoz being successful in this fight, you could turn into a wrestling match. He could very well be the better wrestler in this fight. But I think if Munoz is successful in this fight, I think his knockout power in the stand-up department is a big factor. He's got to get inside of Weidman's reach. I think he's got to put Weidman out of his comfort zone. He's got to get inside that reach. He's got to land that right. And if he is to land that right, if he is to wobble Weidman, he's got to be like a shark, and he's got to go right after and try and finish Weidman. So that's where I see Mark Munoz being successful in this fight. Where my prediction lies is that, will this one be a boring wrestling match? It could very well be, but I'm going to say that this one is going to be an exciting fight. It could be a slugfest. What I think is going to happen is that, you know, there could be takedowns, but I think these guys are both such skilled wrestlers that the wrestling is going to cancel each other out, and we're going to see more of a stand-up fight. And what it comes down to, if it is to remain a stand-up fight, that's my prediction, is that it's going to remain a stand-up fight. Who's going to win that fight? And if it remains standing, I'm going to take Mark Munoz in that. Mark Munoz has the knockout power, he has the explosiveness, and he is going to press forward. He's going to try and put Weidman out of his comfort zone. When I see that happening, I see Mark Munoz being the ultimate chin tester, and whether it's the first, second, or third round, I think it's going to happen in one of those rounds, or later rounds, but I see Mark Munoz pressing forward. I see him connecting with Chris Weidman. Weidman's going to be wobbled, and I think Munoz is going to be like a shark, like I said, and he's going to smell blood in the water, and he's going to go for that finish. That's what he has to do. If you wobble Weidman, you got to go right after it. You got to throw the power. So where my prediction lies, I either see Mark Munoz winning this fight by knockout or TKO, and being considered one of the top contenders in the middleweight division, and perhaps getting that title fight with Anderson Silva. So I'll take Munoz defeating Weidman via TKO or knockout in the UFC on Fuel TV 4 card. And that's what I have for this edition. It's Kyle Delaney signing off. I'm out of here.